What's going on, guys? Today we're back. We're working on the S13. We're at it again with the KA. We're going to be trying to get the KA running. Hopefully we do. There's a lot of things we have to do to make that happen, especially with me having to do custom wiring job. So today we're going to be trying to knock out as much as we can. Hopefully we'll get the car running and maybe even driving.
Let's get to work.
In towards the Oklahoma City metro here, and as we take you a little bit closer in towards the just west of Moore, some light showers from Will Rogers World Airport, some more showers right now from Choctaw High School up towards around Wellston.
All right, guys. So today I'm gonna be finishing up a few odds and ends on the front end of the car. So we're gonna be first changing out the spark plugs. The reason we're changing out the spark plugs, I'm gonna use that as an example. So to get the car to run, you have to have spark, fuel, and air. That's kind of in a nutshell is how you get a car to run. So the reason I'm changing out the spark plugs is we bought this motor. It's been sitting for 4 years, and we don't really know how many miles that are actually on the motor, maybe around 140,000. So we're just going to go and swap in a new pair. We might as well. It's easy to do. So we're going to throw in a new pair of spark plugs, some spark plug wires. I know John's doing something in the background. I have eyes in the back of my head, so I can see that. And then from there on out, we'll just kind of see from there. But first things first, let's get the spark plugs in. First things first, so on the spark plugs, the reason we're swapping them out, the motor's been sitting for around 4 years now. Figure we're putting everything else brand new in it, might as well just throw new spark plugs in. They cost about $10, $12, good general maintenance. You should change them out every, I would say around 60,000 miles or so, depending on your application. So pretty much, it's pretty easy to do. I would recommend starting your car up and letting it warm up a little bit beforehand. That way because when the motor warms up, it actually heat expands a little bit, so it makes it easier to come out. And you don't want to have to rethread those if they get stuck, and that sounds like a bad idea. So then pretty much when you're installing the new ones, I always like to put a little bit of oil on the threads. That way you don't and you don't want to go in just trying to get it to start. You want to make sure you can almost just finger start it first. You always have to lube it up first, finger it, and that way you make sure it goes in without having to mess with the threads, because you do not want to have to rethread that. So, alright guys.
Alrighty, guys, so I'm right now working on the wiring harness for the 240. The biggest thing is I previously ripped out all of the wiring harness in the chassis on this car before and went to a completely custom switch panel setup. We're kind of going back to that because we don't have another stock harness that we can simply plug back into the ECU harness. So part of that means I've got to actually rebuild my whole switch panel that I did before. Now I've also got to strip down the stock wiring harness, and I've got to make it work with my switch panel harness that I'm making. So you want to do this if you're kind of in my situation where you don't have a body harness, but if you've got a stock body harness and it's all plug and play, that's the easiest way to do this. This adds on a lot of hours of work. We're probably looking at a good 3 to 4 straight hours of work, and that's only because I've done this quite a few times before. If it's your first time doing something like this, it's going to take you a very long time to understand and know how to do this, and by a long time I mean weeks. So it's definitely something that you know, if you're on a time crunch, don't sit there and do it for your first time. But if you have the time to do it, it's definitely good to learn. That way when you're in situations like this and you need to custom wire something, you're able to. So.
You mean your first time takes longer? I thought it was always shorter, John.
You could say I'm a special person.
Supreme victory!
Alright guys, so this is the first thing that we're kind of working on, or at least I'm working on. I kind of got to go through this whole rat's nest of chassis harness here. What this was this was my first ever chassis harness I did. That's why it's really not clean or organized. Also, this got completely taken out while I didn't own this car for a short period of time, but it was still left with the car. So it was actually taken out and it was kind of put to the side. So that's why it's kind of in this whole rat's nest. So now I kind of have to go through the entire harness. I gotta make sure that we understand what wire is doing what. Kind of got to rewire everything. This is the main switch panel that I used. I got my power button, engine start button, a couple auxiliary switches as well, battery kill switch. So I've kind of got all the mandatory things that we're going to need to run this car. And essentially I got to basically re-engineer all of this, definitely clean a lot of it up, but we're going to be reusing pretty much almost all of this to get this car running and get it working with the stock ECU. Oh, You see what happened to it, Sean?
Then the top hat just...
Yeah, it just split in half. Alright, so we were pulling out the fuel injector. There was one that we actually broke the clip on. You can see here we broke this clip while we were putting the engine in the car. The chain put a lot of pressure on there and snapped the plastic piece. So we opted to go ahead and just replace the injector. We got it for about $13 shipped. So, yeah. This is the top hat of the injector, and the rest of the injector is still in... Yeah, so that's just not good. Yeah.
Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 9,000!
And this is the second half of the injector, guys.
What a Super Saiyan.
After my power levels went over 9,000, I went Super Saiyan. I had to pull out this injector, and what happened was when we were actually putting the motor into the car, the chain actually hit the clip on the injector, and we figured it'd be easier just to buy a whole new injector for $13. So we had a little bit of trouble getting the old one out, so we broke the top hat of it off, and we just had to end up prying it out. But it's out, and I'm going to throw the new injector in. Alright guys, so here's the new injector we got for $13 shipped off of eBay. It's a OEM injector, so not kind of knockoff. So the first thing you want to do when you're putting a new injector in is see this little ring right here, this little ring. So you actually want to lube that up. You can either use oil or you can kind of spin on it, you know. Spin on it to get a little bit of lubrication.
Did you just spit on the tip? You just spit on the tip!
Sometimes that's the best way to do in a pinch.
I was building this wall of trust, my friend. It isn't easy when you fight for bringing me down. You know I'll be there, can't you see you letting me down?
Alright guys, so I'm currently working on the wiring harness for the engine bay. I'm starting to strip down the actual engine harness. I need to get it down to the individual wires so I can work on the pinout for the ECU. So I've got the bare essentials already wired up, like the injectors, the MAF, the throttle body, and along with a couple of other things that we need in the wiring harness as well. So essentially I'm just stripping down the entire wiring harness. I'm about 3 or 1/4 of the way done. I still got 3/4 of the way to go. We also got the rat's nest figured out with the relays and the switches and everything, so we're all good on that end. It's mostly just kind of getting everything stripped down and ready to go. Today we knocked out the spark plugs, the fuel injectors, and some of the wiring. Make sure to stay tuned for next episode, where hopefully we get the engine running.